Chapter 16. Home Again. We rematerialized upon a dirty street in need of much repair. It was more like we had just arrived in a different country. It didn't resemble the Alta we had once known. Around us, amid the debris, beggars in torn and tattered rags, smelling from body waste, held out their filthy hands for food and money as the carriages passed by carrying people dressed in fine clothes. One beggar approached a wagon. The bejeweled man inside stuck his head out of the window, clutching a handkerchief to his nose. He removed the laced linen cloth from his nose and spit into the beggar's face. The beggar shrank away from the carriage. The other people in the carriage laughed. The beggar slumped back to a large block of marble. The other beggars stood their ground with their hands still outstretched as if it had been a common occurrence. One woman, her face gaunt and filthy with dirt, bent down and picked up a rock, throwing it at the attacker's carriage. She shouted, "We just need food." The driver of the carriage looked back and shook his fist in anger at the woman. The woman crumbled down in tears as another carriage passed. Another bejeweled man stuck his head out of his window and let loose a large wad of spit, hitting the woman in the head. "Die. Then you won't need it." Each of us was overcome with the degradation here. The smell of urine, feces, garbage, and dead and rotting human and animal corpses permeated the air. Overcome with the stench, we each covered our nose and mouth. We were horrified by the scene around us. These people were starving. I rebuked myself with guilt that we hadn't been able to stop the launch. I felt responsible. Suddenly Miram said, "You are not responsible. We did all we could. We can help now, though." We each looked at one another, thinking the same thought. How can we help change this? Although the country had tried to collect itself commercially, it could not. There was no fire crystal to send ships off to other lands. They now only possessed primitive ships, which would take weeks or months to return with goods. All of the farmland near Alta had been covered in lava, and now only fields miles away from the city could be used. It would take a long time before they could organize the seeds, workers, etc., to bring in some crops. Those of the sons of Belial, in their desperation for food, had begun eating the flesh of animals. Those of the One would rather die themselves than to murder an animal and eat its flesh. Those of the One believed that all animals were as humans, being part of the One. And although their level of intelligence was not the same as humans, animals were as vital to the whole of One as any human. The sons of Belial had plunged into a barbarism. It was evident all around us. As we walked down the street, a carriage pulled by a thing came towards us. He was part bull and part man. He had the body of a bull and the head of a man. I was sick seeing him, remembering my own experiences with the sons of Belial when I was a half-bird. A man of yellow skin, dressed in foreign garb, walked slowly in our direction. He was a Lemurian. The Lemurians were small in size. His clothes reflected the robes of his home. They were simple in design, but of quality construction. The Lemurians were known for their fine clothing. It was made from a fine material, unlike any found in ATLATIA. The carriage came closer and closer to the man. When the carriage got to the side of the man of the yellow skin, the man in the carriage, obviously of some wealth, ordered this thing to stop. He got out of his carriage, a tasseled whip in his hand. Before the Lemurian could react, the large man whipped him hard over and over, smiling at his power over the small man. The man tried to cover his face with his arms. The whip lashed into his flesh, onto his arms and on his back. Instinctively, I ran towards the Lemurian, shouting at the red-faced, laughing man, "Leave him be! Stop it!" I tried to stop the man with words. "Leave him be!" The man from the carriage continued his flogging. He spat his words in response. "He is a Lemurian, no better than a dog." No longer could I contain myself. I jumped next to the big man, blocking his whip. I grabbed the whip from his clenched hands, but he was no match for my strength. Instantly, I broke it into two pieces and flung the whip away. Lemurians fell to the ground in pain. Miriam rushed to help him. I held the assailant at arm's length. "He is a man as you are," Miram shouted. The man struggled to break my clutches. He turned and sent a wad of spit hitting Miram. Before I could respond with my fist, he jerked away from me and fled into his carriage, yelling to his driver, "Go!" They took off in the opposite direction. The Lemurian seemed weak. He brushed himself off as he got up. "Thank you. This is the first kindness anyone has shown me here." Oran walked up to the man. "Do you come from Lemuria?" "Yes. When it was destroyed by the quakes and great waves, many of us were able to escape." Miram telepathically asked him if he was of the One. He smiled and telepathically answered her. "Yes. Are you a Lemurian?" I sensed that Miram was conversing with the man on another level, judging from both their expressions. "Is this a private conversation, or can we all join in?" Miram smiled. "Sorry. Lemurians are known for their telepathic powers, and I was just curious if he could also communicate on this level." She stopped and smiled and then turned her attention back to the man responding. "No, I am not a Lemurian, but I also possess the ability to communicate through telepathy." I explained. "She is the High Priestess Miram and my wife. I am Esser, and these are our friends, Oran and Ituitude." They nodded a greeting of hello. "My name is Gomo." He bowed his head in greeting. We invited Gomo to come with us. We talked as we proceeded towards the Street of the Temples. Since he was the first person we had encountered, we asked him questions regarding ATLATIA and his people. Gomo told us of his flight to ATLATIA and the expectations that his people had had. The Lemurians were a different people from the ATLATIans. Their society and culture revolved around their spiritual beliefs, unlike ATLATIA, whose society and culture had come to revolve more and more around technology. The Lemurians were a simple people. They believed as those of the One, but carried that belief into other aspects of their life. It was the community that was important, not the person. Everything was done for the all, not for the one. It was a very happy existence, and joy was a very important part of their life. The Lemurians were in touch with the God force within them, that they were able to access their higher abilities, such as telepathy, telekinesis, etc. These abilities were not remarkable to their society. They were as natural as breathing. The Lemurians knew of no discontent, only peace, love, and harmony. It was a highly evolved society. Through their psychic abilities, they were aware of the destruction which was to destroy the remaining land of the once great continent of Lemuria. They had prepared their exodus by clearing out old tunnels which had been used to the early days to escape from the giant beasts that threatened their land. It was through these tunnels that Gomo had fled. There were those that chose to go with the great land of Lemuria and to pass on to another plane. But Gomo, like others who fled to ATLATIA, chose to expand his experience. He knew it would not be easy, and that the ATLATIans would be prejudiced against him and his people. They were aware that ATLATIA's people, who were of the Law of One, were dwindling. However, they felt that it was their duty to keep those of the One who remained and to help bring joy and harmony back to the world. As we walked under the arch that led to the temples, we breathed a sigh of relief. The area appeared to be only shaken up a bit, compared to the remainder of the city, which was remarkable. We continued up the steps to the Temple of Sacrifice. There were a few cracks and slippages of rock, but basically it was intact. The columns surrounding the face of the temple also had cracks, but no major damage. Nobody spoke as we walked into the main chamber. It was as if we were holding our breath, praying that we could find it as it had been. When we first entered, the first thing we saw was the Table of Eternity. It was as if we had left it, except for a few inches of volcanic dust covering it. I wiped my finger across it. "It looks like we have some cleaning to do." Everyone laughed. It was a release of the tensions that had been building since we arrived. As we looked around, it appeared that any damage was minimal. For a moment, no one spoke. We were remembering the times that we had spent in this room. We were sure that it would never be seen again. I heard roll down Ituitude's face as she touched the dirty table. Softly she said, "We're home." Everyone knew what she was feeling. We had been away for what seemed like forever, and now we were back home. It may have changed in many ways, but there's always a special place in our heart for home. All the anxiety we had felt not knowing what we would find here suddenly dissipated. We were home, and that was what was important. Oran took Ituitude's hand and kissed it. "Yes, we're home, and we have lots of work to do." Gomo volunteered to help Miram and Sikun assess the damages to the other temples, while Oran and I went to the Hall of Records. Ituitude took the chance to investigate the status of the lab. Oran and I were surprised to see the Hall of Records was actually active inside. A few of the scribes had returned and were diligently working, trying to repair the damage to the scrolls and the main computer. Emily was working on the computer as we entered. Hearing us, he stood up excited. "It's Oren and Esser." Heads peered out from the rafters. They all shouted their greetings. To Oren, this was the home he remembered best. He smiled, elated to see some familiar faces. Emily, who was one of our best scribes, put his arms around us, still overflowing with joy. "We had feared that you did not escape in time. It is wonderful to see you both." I picked up a scroll which was crumbling apart. "I see there is a lot of damage." Yes, many of the scrolls were ruined by the rain, and if not totally destroyed by that, they were covered in volcanic ash. Quite a mess, as you can see. Oren walked over to the computer. "Does it work?" Amy shook her head negatively. "No. Only was it affected by the moisture and the ash, but we have no generator yet. I think the main generator for the city somehow blew out all the independent generators. So tell us, what happened to you?" "It's a long story." Oren turned to me. "Come on, Esser, we have work to do." Amy understood. This had always been the way Oren was. Work came first. Talk was always later. I immediately went to the computer and looked it over. "I see you've got your work cut out for you here. Let me give you a hand." Amy smiled, and the two of us went to work on the machine. Oren walked over to what was his old cubicle. It was still covered in ash and broken scrolls. He ripped a piece of cloth from his robe and wiped his hand till it shined, his area until it shined. Then he pulled out from under his robe the gold box which had carried the records for so long. He kissed the box and put it on the table in its usual spot. "We're not done yet." I had been watching him go through the cleaning ritual. I almost startled him as I said, "That's right. We're not even close. Come on. Give us a hand. We're going to try to get this generator working." Oren smiled, putting his arm around me. "You know, it's good to be back and working together again." Ituitude found the lab reconstructed. As she made her way down the hall, she saw many new and different faces. She could see that they had wasted no time in putting the place back in order. The trepidation she was experiencing could not keep her from going on. She knew she had to see what had happened here. As she entered a main laboratory, she could see Helm on the other side talking to a black man. Her thoughts shifted to the last day here in Alta, when he and Amaziah tried to shut her in the airship. Despite the negative feelings she was experiencing towards him, she had to talk to him. She had to find out. As she approached, he looked up. "Well, back from the dead," he snited. "I can assure you that I am quite alive." "Where have you been? Hiding like a rat from a cat?" he laughed. "I have nothing to hide from. What should I be afraid of?" "Me," he glared at her with his beady, sinister eyes. "I'm not afraid of you or Patelin." Helm circled her like she was prey. "I guess you haven't heard the news. Tragic. Patelin was destroyed." "Pity." He laughed haughtily. "I can tell it grieves you." "Not at all. In fact, I have more powers than I had ever dreamed." Ituitude looked at him suspiciously, suddenly feeling uncomfortable. "And what do you propose to do with your power? Destroy the remains of ATLATIA?" Helm paced around her, seemingly unaware of anything but his thoughts. Patelin was a fool. He was so anxious for the success of the airship that he blew up the fire crystal. Fool. He never had any brains. He was not a true scientist, not like me. Now, I'm the greatest scientist in ATLATIA, but I am the supreme ruler. Fear of this man began to grow in Ituitude. He was crazy. He couldn't mean what he was saying. She blurted out a what? "There is no longer a puppet king and queen. I reign supreme." "And how were you appointed to your position?" "By those who know best, the sons of Belial." The fear that had been growing in her now took hold. She quickly turned to leave. He grabbed her by the shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" She was now terrified of this man. "I'm sure that there is somewhere else that I can contribute some good to ATLATIA." "You can contribute plenty here. You're a good scientist." His fingers dug into her shoulder as she adamantly told him, "I will never contribute to your selfish desires." He pressed down on both of her shoulders, forcing her to her knees. "How dare you speak to me like that? Bow to me, bow. Maybe I shall forgive your foolish remarks." "Never." She pulled one hand off her shoulder, bit the other hand, and jumped up to run out the door. Helm screamed after her, "If you want to work here, you must deal with me first." He held his hand in pain. Emily filled Oran and I in on the status of ATLATIA. It was true. The sons of Belial were in power, and Helm had assumed his role as leader. When Oren heard this, he jumped to his feet. Etuitud shouldn't have gone there. Just as he was ready to go after her, she ran in and fell into his arms. I will never go back. Helm has taken over for Bertillon, and he is worse. He is dangerous. She trembled in his arms as he tried to calm her down. Don't worry, you don't have to go back. It's okay. He kissed her on the forehead. I put my arm around her and Oran. We need you here, don't we? I turned to Oran. The generator doesn't work and the computer needs someone with some technical ability. Oran is definitely not the one for that. I chuckled and looked at my friend. We all know your technical abilities, which is none. You can operate a computer, but it goes no further. We all laughed.